Namaste. It's a tragic sight to see some people who are otherwise so articulate at home with family or friends suddenly unable to speak when faced with specific situations in a public gathering or a school or at work. This is a problem of selective mutism. It is a problem on the anxiety spectrum which affects hundreds of people worldwide. We will today discuss selective mutism with our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, can we start off by what is selective mutism?
There are two words here, selective and mutism. Mutism means inability to speak, you go mute. Selective means it is not universal, it is specific to some situations. And this is very, very important because if the mutism was universal, you can say it has to do something with the biological factors or the organs of speech. But the moment you say the speech is okay in certain contexts, it means there is nothing fundamentally wrong with the biological apparatus of speaking. What is in difficulty is the psychological sickness which does not allow you to use the biological apparatus in a normal way. So selective mutism refers to the disorder where a person is not able to speak only in certain situations, and otherwise the person is able to speak very normally. These situations often relate to having to perform in a collectivity, maybe in a school, maybe in a college, or maybe in a social gathering. But essentially in some collectivity, uh, most of the time, selective mutism comes up. In certain cases, selective mutism can also come up in front of certain authority figures or in front of certain events or certain situations. So this is a very circumscribed, selective, and precipitated by some stressor kind of mutism.
And so, what are the symptoms that are covered under selective mutism?
It is inability to speak uh, in social situations, mostly when one is asked to perform in front of many people. It is fumbling for words. It is feeling highly anxious. It is avoidance of those situations. Uh, in a few cases, it may be preceded by the event which is likely to precipitate this, may be preceded by some psychosomatic symptoms. It can lead to uh, a kind of a freezing behavior when one is supposed to speak. So there is a feeling of high anxiety. There is a feeling of somehow to escape from that situation. And very often these episodes are followed by a marked feeling of shame, embarrassment, or guilt.
So, what is the psychoanalytic explanation of the causation of selective mutism?
There are many explanations in psychoanalysis with regard to this selective mutism. There is a Freudian explanation of uh, the fear of the Oedipal catastrophe happening, leading to such anxiety that one is not able to speak. There is a Kleinian explanation of the attack of bad breast, where the galaxy of people in front of you is seen as a galaxy of bad breasts who can attack anytime. There can be a fear of the bad mother or the bad father. So the moment the person comes in the crowd, one is not able to perform. And if that parent is not in the crowd, one is able to perform. Similarly, there can be a similar fear of a teacher or any other authority figure. There is also the fear of disintegration of a weak ego in front of everyone, where the challenge of being in front of everyone is overwhelming, the ego disintegrates, anxiety is released, and the anxiety does not allow you to speak. There is also a possibility of one being so much on a high, such an ecstatic manic high that one is not able to speak. This is very rare, but it's possible. Or there might be a fear of going insane in that manic high, and as a defensive measure, the selective mutism is brought about in order to save oneself from going intensely insane in that whole intensity, because so many objects are found at once. The opportunity of exhibitionism, which was lost in childhood, is again found coming true, and therefore there is a fear of going insane in the intensity of that situation, and as a defense to it, a countermeasure is created, which unfortunately gets into a suboptimal situation of selective mutism. So there are many competing examples, explanations of why selective mutism happens. In case of ISTDP, we would say that somehow the guilt or anger or pain is coming up in face of the collectivity, and therefore the signal anxiety is creating selective mutism. So I believe all these competing explanations apply to some people and they don't apply to others. We have to proceed on the principle of holistic healing, that everything works on someone and nothing works on everyone. So this is the kind of situation we are in, that we have competing explanations, almost 5 to 7 different explanations of selective mutism within psychoanalysis, and each applies to one group of people.
So how does psychoanalysis proceed with the healing of selective mutism?
It is essentially to revisit the cause of anxiety, because the mutism is only a derivative feature of essentially underlying anxiety, and that anxiety is related to some person or some event. So revisit to that event within the therapy framework is the way out. So we have to revisit the event and recollect the event consciously and get the effect out of the event. So unless the unconscious event is made conscious, the relationship between that event and selective mutism at present is established, and the pent-up emotion is released and catharted out. We can't have a lasting relief from this problem. So that is one aspect of this therapy, that it will essentially be on the classical psychoanalytic lines, revisit, find that causal event or the causal person, find out thoughts related to the person, make them conscious, find out emotions and bring them up in catharsis and release them. So this would be the generic way of going about. In terms of duration, we would be looking at twice a week for at least 6 months to 1 year. 1 year is more practical. So twice a week, 1 year would be the duration. And this would include lot of self-work, quite unlike the classical psychoanalytic therapy, where self-work outside of the session is not deemed to be very important. This is one of those disorders where self-work is important, practice is important. So I would say behavioral therapy combined with psychoanalytic psychotherapy will produce far better results than only psychoanalytic psychotherapy, because gradual desensitization, gradual mastery with practice is a very important aspect of this particular problem. That after you have insight and after you have catharsis, action and practice are equally important. So this is the way I think psychoanalysis should go. It should combine with behavioral therapy. In terms of the nature of psychoanalytic psychotherapy, I would say, like every disorder on this anxiety spectrum, start with a cohesion way, create a safe space, allow the person to internalize a good object, allow the person to have self-object experiences, allow the person to interact with a good parent, and through all of it, build a more solid, stable sense of self, internalize a good object, be free from the constant fear of being attacked, be free from this virtual presence of the bad parent. Because this is a key thing. People with panic or people with generalized anxiety disorder or with selective mutism, they often feel that even when when physically parents are not around them, in a psychological sense they are around them, and they will scold them or beat them or assault them in some way. So punishment from the parent, which is extremely painful, humiliating, uh, this kind of uh, fear of that constant punishment has to be overcome. So the first thing they have to overcome is to realize that they are free from the parents. Physically, when the parents are not there, they are actually not there, and they don't have to think that psychologically they are there, because this is the way their mind operates. That even though physically the parents are not there, they still feel in the psychological sense as though they are around, they are watching, and they will attack. So the first point in this psychoanalytic psychotherapy would be to create a safe space, be a good parent, not attack, allow the person to feel that even if he does a mistake, he will not be attacked. And after the cohesion part is over, depending on what reason we see for the selective mutism, on that basis, we take the school, the approach of a particular school, maybe Freudian, maybe Kleinian, or maybe continuing with cohesion. Couple this with self-work and some behavioral therapy, and support groups also of same age or elderly people. This comprehensive package, along with holistic healing, can provide a much better resolution to this problem. And many people, as they grow up, naturally overcome this problem. Those who don't, they of course need therapy and conscious long-term working out.
In any particular thing, you mentioned holistic healing, but any particular thing that in holistic healing that would help in selective mutism?
Yes, there are uh, 3 or 4 aspects which would heal, which would be of very great help. I think psychodrama would be of a very great help. Psychodrama where one is facing an audience, and through the process of gradual desensitization or gradual exposure, one overcomes in bits and pieces the fear of a crowd or a fear of an event where the selective mutism manifests itself. So recreating that precipitating factor, being with that and slowly overcome the fear is a very efficient way of doing it. So psychodrama is very important. Second, the blockages which are there in the throat chakra, which are related to the root chakra, can be addressed also by Reiki and pranic healing. And very importantly, uh, participation in sports, participation in collective events, participation in social groups which are positive and supportive will boost up the confidence of the person, and the collateral benefits will flow into the healing of selective mutism. So apart from all relaxation techniques, which may be pranic healing, Reiki, psychotherapy, relaxation, sorry, hypnotherapy, relaxation, certain forms of pranayam. Apart from all of that, I think the key would be 2. So I would recommend a combination of psychodrama and homeopathy, along with psychotherapy, the classical psychoanalytic psychotherapy, which combines psychoanalytic psychotherapy as the main source, behavioral therapy, psychodrama as supportive sources, and homeopathy also in support. This kind of a comprehensive package, I think, should produce very good results in selective mutism.
So the family members and the caregivers, of course, patient education is something that we'll talk about in our next point. But how about the family members and the caregivers? How do what kind of do's and don'ts should they follow or to help the person with selective mutism?
It's very important because often they are the cause of it. This is a situation where the sorry, are we referring to the patient education or are we referring to the caregiver education?
No, the caregiver. I missed on the patient education.
Okay, so caregiver education. Okay, let's start with caregiver and then we can go to the patient. The caregiver education is very important because often they are the cause of it. It is the fear of the bad parent which often leads to selective mutism. Not necessarily always, but most often this is the case. That the fear is essentially the fear of the bad parent. So here their own displaying a behavior which is non-persecutory, supportive and loving is very, very important. It is not only that they can manage themselves better, but they themselves are the cause of the trouble. So in this particular case, they are not only caregivers, in many cases they are themselves the cause of it. And therefore it's doubly important for them to understand which of their doings are resulting in selective mutism. And whatever they have done till now, what can be done to undo the effects of that. So the first is the caregiver education will allow the caregivers not to repeat the causes of selective mutism and not to fortify it further. Two, how to undo what they have done if they have done it unintentionally. Three, if they are not the cause, something else is the cause, how best they can help the person undo that cause. Now they can't scientifically do this action unless they know what is the cause. So that would come from the caregiver education. Fourth, they can save themselves from a kind of a secondary anger against the patient as to why you have selective mutism. So that they understand what are the causes of it and the person himself is not responsible for it. And lastly, they can find holistic healing sources, social support groups. They can know the do's and don'ts. They can know which therapy is working, which medicine is not working. And all of this is facilitated in a scientific way, made more efficient if caregiver education is taken care of.
And sir, how about the patient education? What does a patient need to know?
Well, the first thing the patient needs to know is nothing is wrong with his organs. That it is not a hardware problem, it's a software problem. And that itself is a great relief provider. That the person knows that once this small software problem can be overcome, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with him. And that boosts confidence and provides him so much of positivity that he is able to deal with the healing process much better. Two, he is able to scientifically understand the process. That the process may not be a realistic process, may be a fantasy process, but yet what it is all about. So he is able to understand the process and the understanding helps him handle it better. Three, he can clearly map out the stressors, the precipitating factors, and therefore have a very clear list of do's and don'ts. With those do's and don'ts, he can manage himself much better and avoid the precipitating factors. Use the precipitating factors for therapy in the mode of gradual desensitization and slowly overcome them. Also, he knows which medicine or therapy is working or not working. Also, he knows how to create a basket of holistic tools and support groups in society, which groups to enter into, how to make use of holistic tools like psychodrama, and objectively observe this whole process of catastrophic thinking, which does not allow him to speak. This is something which can greatly impair his social functioning. Especially in teen and adult ages, this is a very uh, painful and humiliating experience for those who suffer from it. So if you look at the price one pays for this disease, it's very high. So if he knows it inside out and if he works sincerely, and I'm sure any person who suffers from it will work sincerely, you don't have to tell him the stakes are so high. The patient education enables him, empowers him, enlightens him, and makes him far better placed to manage himself, to respond appropriately to parents or other precipitating factors, and to create a holistic ecosystem of health involving holistic healing, social groups, friends, and activities.
Is there any particular age when this disorder onsets, or when does it occur?
It can occur in very early in age. There is no particular age there, but in most cases, by the time in most mild cases, people are able to overcome it. As they grow older. In some cases, as they grow older, it becomes uh, less frequent and manifests itself only when the stress is very high. So in the normal, so a person with selective mutism in childhood may turn out to be an adult who does not have selective mutism in general, but when under extreme stress, he starts manifesting selective mutism. And in some people, it will just continue from childhood right up to the adult age and through the adult age. But this will be very few. I think if one works upon it sincerely, most people can come out of it in a substantial way.
Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you, sir. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. We have covered selective mutism today. In our subsequent videos, we will be covering other disorders from the DSM-5 series. Do watch our coming videos and write to us in the comment section below. Or you can even mail us on hvindia@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. Namaste.
Namaste.